Welcome back to the Citystead. Today we are going to talk about shoddy carpentry. One of my absolutely favorite things. And it's about one of my favorite times. It is time to do some more shoddy carpentry. So what do you guys think about today's shoddy Citystead project here? But we're talking about shoddy carpentry because we're also going to talk about DIY projects, doing things as opposed to buying kits and just making up everything you do with your own creativity to fit your needs a little bit better. So today's video is part of a collaboration, guys. This is the Urban Homesteaders collab I'm doing with Natalie at Hey It's a Good Life, Kira at Homestead Dreamin', and Victoria at Grow Your Groceries. And we are sharing all sorts of different things about building urban homesteads and how we got to where we're at. And the final video coming out in this series is going to be our ultimate homestead dream. So stay tuned for that next week. And also, I will link everyone down below so you can go check them out. Today we're going to talk about DIY projects on the homestead, things that we have done, projects we've worked on, and just thinking about it. And when it comes to DIY projects or any kind of major thing that you're going to do, whether you buy a kit or build it yourself, design it yourself, you're really putting in infrastructure. And that's kind of what I want to talk about, some of the infrastructure that we've built here and ways we have gone about doing it. So we have talked before about how important it is to build really good soil. One of the things we can do to do that is to build different ways of composting. What do you think? You guys ready for a little sexy montage of the composter? Yeah? Some little DIY projects I did, little tiny composters that I made out of Rubbermaid totes, and these are just regular old compost bins, basically like a tumbler except for you have to manually tumble it. Then of course there's also things like the vermicomposting bin. Little worms, little happy worms in there. Oh, look at them so happy. They love their little bin. And this is just a little DIY project, very simple to do. What we're doing today is building a little worm farm. I am going to do a 3-tote system. A good layer of dirt at the bottom of it. Put them over the whole thing like so. Sand or our grit, and I'm going to sprinkle it in a little bit over here. So as you can tell, I am a big fan of Rubbermaid totes when it comes to composting on the urban homestead. A lot of that is because of the compact size that they are, the fact that you can stack them on top of each other pretty well, pretty easy. So I really like to use them for things like that, and it's kind of like getting a ready-made bin and then just modifying it to your means. So it's a little bit less DIY because you already have the framework of it and then you're just modifying it to fit what you want to do with it. So I find them very handy for stuff like composting. So something that we do not DIY here at the Citystead is bee boxes and frames. I have not tried to DIY any of those. I have just gotten a few kits. It's something I don't know if I really want to mess with because you can get the kits very easily. I'm not sure if it's something I really want to mess with myself, trying to build my own boxes. You get dimensions wrong or anything like that, it can kind of mess up your whole flow of everything. So it's good to have parts that are all interchangeable when it comes to something where you're adding and keep adding and mixing and matching all the different frames and stuff. So it's a little bit better sometimes to buy something that is a kit put together. Looks like we're filling with honey. Some nectar. So while we do keep worms and bees here at the Citystead, we have taken two different approaches. We DIY everything for the worms, and when it comes to bees, we stick to a standard. We buy the stuff, the kits that are already ready-made. And it's just because, like I said, I feel like those are built a little different. If I try DIY and stuff, I get off a little bit in different sizes. I'm just not gonna have things flow as well when I'm moving things around, adding and taking away frames and boxes. So I like to kind of keep that, buying something that is already very templated out for me, as opposed to the worms where you can make multiple different kind of bins. So it's a lot easier to DIY, in my opinion. Now that's a lot with all of livestock. If you're gonna have quail, you're gonna have rabbits, you're gonna have chickens, there's so many different plans out there to be able to build your own hutches and chickshaws. All right, well, I did it. I built the first ever kid tractor. Figure I'll just rotationally graze them across the whole backyard for the entire summer, and hopefully I'll never have to mow grass again, ever. Wouldn't that be great? Or you could buy kits, and there's a lot of kits out there that you can buy and put together. So depending on what you want to do, if you want to take the time to design your own little livestock home sanctuary, it's not something that's a daunting task. But there are a lot of different kits out there you can buy, just throw together and be done with it. So I believe when it comes to urban homesteading, most people do more gardening than they do animal care, because it's a little easier in urban areas to grow vegetables than it is to grow meat. So one of the most important things that we do in the garden, you can see all around me little raised beds over there, and there are a zillion ways to build a raised bed. Now, while I won't tell you how to build a raised bed, one of my favorite methods for actually filling in raised beds is doing a hugelkultur style. So I put all these logs down here. I got a lot of branches. I filled it up maybe halfway to the wood frame here. Sod that I pulled off the top with the grass on it still, and put it in here kind of upside down to give me more of a base of dirt. We put all that sod back on there. We're pretty full on this thing. My urban hugelkultur bed cost me a total of about $6. I bought that board, made what, 4 cuts on it, and screwed it together with some screws that I already had. So that's how I do the hugelkultur beds, and I think they're very, very simple, and it's a good way to reuse a lot of that waste that you would otherwise set out at the curb, especially in an urban environment when you have limited resources like that. Trying to use as much of it as you can, leaves, branches falling anywhere you can use, your old weeds that you're pulling out, try to reuse those the best you can. I think hugelkultur beds are a really good way to be able to throw them back in the ground and get them working again for you. Another thing for growing gardens in an urban environment is obviously growing vertically, and you can do that in many different ways. Building little trellises however you want. I like to do the cattle panel trellises. You guys have seen them a zillion times all over here. I have a ton of them. I like to make little teepees out of bamboo sticks, and anything you can do vertically is a good way. So there's a lot of different projects to grow things vertically, really easy, simple things to do, and it's really gonna maximize all of the space you have in your garden. So being a dad on a homestead, it's also important to incorporate your children, and that's why we're standing in their back little corner right here. This is one of the projects I did for them. I've made them little tables back here, their own little tiki room with that sweet bench. Probably one of my best DIY projects right there I've ever made. But I don't think of their little fort as just a fort for them. It's a very functional fort. Actually, there's a mulberry tree right here above it. It grows tons of vegetables that acts as the roof for that fort. And then there, right in here, you can see there's actually a bunch of blackberries. So this cattle panel we put on the front here as a wall is actually lined with blackberries, and we let blackberries grow in here. It just becomes this ginormous functional area. It grows food and provides the kids with a place to play. And talking about functional and fun, that is also the Grape Teepee. This is something that we built for the kids. It also grows food as a productive area. Now building something like this, while it looks like a wild, crazy jungle in here, I think of it as a good way to get the kids' creativity flowing, to get them more connected with nature. I mean, they're literally sitting right next to a bunch of grapes. The bean tent is another one of those projects that's just kind of created for the kids. They can run around, play in there. It creates a lot of shade and just a new cool little hideout for them, while also producing tons of food. I also worked on building the kids this little outdoor mud play kitchen, and this is something that I can add this faucet to eventually, and this will also be a vegetable wash station for us. Kind of a 2-for, works for the garden but also works to keep the kids super entertained. Ring catchment is another project for urban homestead that's really important, and for the most part you can buy kits if you want. I DIY this entire thing. This is a food grade 55 gallon barrel, and I just bought a little tiny kit for the gutter there, and then I actually put my own drain system on here, and it's all stuff I bought at a hardware store. Pretty easy to do, but something that you can DIY pretty simple right here is a rain catchment system for yourself, or you could buy a fancy kit if you wanted to. And when we're talking about DIY projects, building the infrastructure of your homestead, greenhouses are one of the top ones to me, because if you're in a colder climate, you can get those seeds started earlier, and you can have all sorts of greenhouses. We built this one out of an actual thing we bought from Amazon, one of these little 5-tier cheapos, and we improved it by putting a little wooden door on it that opens a lot easier, shoring up the weight problem because they tip over super easy, so we added the weight to it so it won't tip over, and we actually sealed it up a little bit better so it actually holds a little bit more warmth inside of it. Then of course, if you have enough room to build something like this, which is of course my pride and joy, you guys all know about my cattle panel greenhouse. So building projects on an urban homestead is all about trying to utilize space to the best of your ability. And I put a lot of that thought into building and designing this greenhouse, to doing some of the layout of my garden area. The greenhouse, for the most part, is the center hub of all of the infrastructure here at the Citystead. Everything starts and ends in this greenhouse. Seed starting all starts here. We actually try to grow food into the winter inside the greenhouse, and then, you know, it's where everything happens. We harvest tools are all in here. Like, just tons of stuff is stored and housed inside this greenhouse that makes everything here possible. So to make the greenhouse work to the best of its ability and to try to use it in the winter, we went ahead and we built raised beds in here. Now I know this bed looks really fugly right now. This is all coming out. I'm going to actually replant this to try to start growing inside the greenhouse for the summer. Now that some of the super hot heat is tuned down a little bit, we're going to plant this out. We're going to get ready for fall growing into the winter with a lot of our greens in the greenhouse. So one of the main things we built in here was this little potting table. It is kind of the main office table in here, and it is literally a 2x4 frame. It is 4 legs, a little top across to put the top on, which is 1x10, and then there's also a second shelf down there which has got all the junk on it right now, all the seed starting stuff. And then the other thing we did was build another one to go on the sidewall here. Now this is where we added a lot of design to maximize the usage of this greenhouse. So this right here actually slides right on over. So now when we go to start seeds in the spring, we set trays out there. They get the full sun in the greenhouse. We set trays up here. They also get full sun in this greenhouse. And then when I need to come in here to do the work that I'm going to do for the day, all we have to do is take this, put it to the side. I like to call that my little IKEA greenhouse area. It's about maximizing the little bit of space you have wherever you can. Another one of my favorite projects I did was this William Coleman inspired Shelvin system right here. So these are his soil blocking trays. If you know anything about William Coleman, it's kind of infamous for these soil blocking trays. And all I did was make these trays up and then put them on a stand so that I could have a little shelf space in here. I can set seed starting tray right there. I could store 3 of them right here. That helps. That makes a ton of space, especially inside this little greenhouse. Trying to maximize all that I have, building something that can save space like this, give you a lot more storage, a lot more seed starting capabilities. That's what I was aiming for, and I think I achieved that a lot in this greenhouse. It's a real mess right now because it's got all these trays stacked up. I gotta start putting all this stuff away. But another thing I have is these heat sink I put in here that I'm trying to use for my winter growing, and I was able to just throw some boards on top of that and make another really nice long shelf. So when it was springtime, this place was jam-packed with seed starts. It looked amazing. It looked very beautiful and green in here for a while, and then I put it out and the groundhog ate it all. This greenhouse is probably one of my favorite things I've ever built. other than maybe that bench I built for the kids, because that just turned out super sweet. So when it comes to the actual greenhouse design, the main frame of the greenhouse, I just used a Texas Prepper greenhouse plan that they had with the cattle panels, and then I slightly modified it. Instead of pulling plastic over the ends like they did, you can see here I built some solid walls, and that was because I thought I would need a little more insulation, like what we did here, added some insulation, because we are up north, so it's a lot colder up here. And I was thinking I gotta insulate a little bit, you know, to try to hold as much heat as I can. Plus I had this idea that I'm gonna cover these, which I will eventually, and I'm gonna make a chalkboard wall here. So I can have a chalkboard wall, I can keep notes and track of stuff and just write down things that I'm doing throughout the year. Plus I just thought it might add a little more stability, especially when it comes to snow load and stuff like that, because we are up north. Texas does not have to worry about snow loads on their greenhouses, so they can build all the cattle panel greenhouses they want. But we have to do things a little bit different up north. So this is the biggest project I've built on the homestead, and like I said, it is the main hub, the main frame of everything that happens here at the Citystead. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed seeing some of my DIY projects, some of the ones I'm super proud of. There are a few that did fail, but they're no longer here because I took them down. So I can't show them to you, but there have been failed DIY projects by far. And there's, even when it comes to things like the water catchment, it really needs to be improved. Right now it's kind of on leaning legs. I still have to fix that. Josh, get on it. Note to self, make sure you fix this. So I hope some of my DIY projects have really inspired you guys to get working on your own DIY projects, or maybe they've just given you an idea of what to do with your space. Yeah, that's it. That was fun, showing you all the little projects we worked on and some of the stuff we've built. It's been a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff happened this year, actually, and the shutdown of everything gave us a lot of time to build a lot of extra things. All right, guys, remember, this is part of the collab, so I will put the playlist right there. And make sure you check everyone out. I'll link them all down below. A lot of great channels, a lot of good stuff happening in urban homesteading. We are trying to bring more awareness to gardening and homesteading in urban environments. People, just starting to encourage people to do it, you know. Don't wait till you have that small farm with all the acres that you want. Start where you are. In an urban environment, it will really spark your creativity, especially if you start DIYing your own projects, to maximize the space that you have and to make your things very, very functional and fun. Well, that's it. That's all I got for you guys. So remember to be bold and grow bold, and as always, we'll see you in the very next video.